At our family trip meetup, only my nieces and nephews stood waiting. My husband's text read, "Taking my new family to the Maldives. You babysit." I called CPS, then his board members. When their flight landed, his empire crumbled. Turns out his soulmate was an auditor with his offshore files. Poetic justice tastes sweet. Where is everyone? The question hung in the humid summer air as I stood alone beside my overloaded SUV, staring at 5 confused children huddled under the weathered gazebo. This wasn't right. My mind refused to process the scene before me. 5 kids, no adults, no Evan. Just me and a growing sense that something was terribly wrong. I'd spent all morning packing our car with coolers of homemade sandwiches, fresh fruit and juice boxes. The trunk was stuffed with board games, inflatable pool toys and fishing gear for our annual week-long family retreat at Cedar Lake Resort. Evan had left earlier to pick up his brother's kids and meet his sister's family at the cabins. I was only supposed to bring the supplies. Aunt Jordan. My niece Mia ran toward me, her rainbow flip-flops slapping against the gravel. "We've been waiting forever." I forced a smile, hiding my confusion as I hugged her. "Where's Uncle Evan? And your parents?" "Mom and Dad dropped us off with Uncle Evan at the gas station," explained 10-year-old Tyler, kicking at the gravel with his sneaker. "He said they had to go handle something and would meet us here." The 4 other children nodded in agreement. My nephews Max and Jason and nieces Mia and Sophie, along with Evan's brother's son, Charlie. 5 children ages 7 to 13, all looking at me expectantly. No other adults in sight. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank each of you for joining me today. If you've ever felt invisible or underestimated in your own life, Jordan's journey from betrayed wife to empowered businesswoman might resonate with you. Consider subscribing. It's completely free and connects you with a community that understands what it means to find your voice after being silenced. Let's dive in. I checked my watch, 3:17 p.m. Evan should have been here 2 hours ago. "Let's get you guys into some shade," I said, trying to sound cheerful while unlocking the SUV. "Who wants a sandwich while we wait?" As the children gathered around the back of my vehicle, I pulled out my phone and dialed Evan's number. Straight to voicemail. I tried his sister, then his brother. No answer from either. My sister's phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail too. "Uncle Evan was texting a lot in the car," mentioned Jason as he bit into a turkey sandwich. "He kept smiling at his phone." "He stopped at that gas station for a really long time," added Sophie. "He was talking to someone outside." I nodded, trying not to let my worry show as I handed out juice boxes. "Did he say anything about where he was going when he left you here?" The children shook their heads, too busy with their unexpected picnic to notice my trembling hands. "He did say something weird," Charlie piped up, licking mayonnaise from his fingers. "He told us to be extra good for Aunt Jordan because you'd be taking care of us by yourself for a while." My heart sank. "Did he say how long a while would be?" Charlie shrugged. "No, but he gave us all $20 and said it was for being good kids." I turned away, pretending to organize the cooler while I composed myself. The knot in my stomach tightened. This wasn't a case of running late or a miscommunication. Something deliberate was happening. "Aunt Jordan, when can we go swimming?" Max asked, already finishing his sandwich. I forced another smile. "Soon, buddy. Let's check in first." Herding 5 children and our luggage to the resort office took 3 trips. With each passing minute, my phone remained silent. No calls, no texts, nothing from Evan or any other family member. The cheerful woman at the front desk made the situation even more surreal. "Welcome to Cedar Lake Resort, Mrs. Thompson. We have your 3 cabins ready." She slid 3 sets of keys across the counter. "Your husband mentioned you might be checking in separately." "My husband was here?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "Oh no, he called this morning. Said there'd be a change of plans but you'd handle everything." She lowered her voice. "He did sound rushed, if you don't mind me saying." I gripped the counter edge. "Have any other adults from our party checked in?" Her smile faltered as she checked her computer. "No, just your reservation under Thompson. 3 cabins supposedly for 3 families." She glanced at the children clustered around me. "Is there a problem?" "I'm not sure yet," I admitted. "Could you give me just the keys to 1 cabin for now? We might not need all 3. Outside the office, I sat the children down on a wooden bench while I called Evan again. Voicemail. This time I left a message. Evan, where are you? I'm at the resort with all the kids and no one else is here. Call me back immediately. The sun was beginning its descent toward the treeline as we lugged our bags to cabin 7. The children, excited by the adventure of it all, raced ahead to claim beds and explore. I followed more slowly, my mind racing through scenarios, each worse than the last. Inside the rustic cabin, I found a stack of $20 bills on the kitchen counter with a yellow sticky note. Pizza money for the week. In Evan's handwriting. The confirmation seeped in like cold water. This wasn't an emergency or a mistake. Whatever was happening had been planned. Aunt Jordan, Uncle Evan left his fishing rod here. Tyler called from the bedroom. It's still in its case. Evan never went anywhere without that expensive fishing rod. It was his pride and joy, a gift from his father. I sank onto a kitchen chair, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me. The children's voices faded to background noise as I stared at my silent phone, willing it to ring. The darkening sky outside the window mirrored the shadow creeping across my heart. Please let me be wrong, I whispered to myself even as certainty settled like a stone in my chest. Please let there be an explanation. But deep down I already knew. The careful planning. The cash left behind. The fishing rod abandoned. Evan wasn't coming back. And somehow I'd been left responsible for 5 children who weren't mine, at a family vacation that suddenly felt like the beginning of a nightmare. The screen of my phone finally lit up. A text message. From Evan. My trembling finger hovered over Evan's message. Around me, the children's voices echoed through the cabin as they claimed beds and explored closets. For just one moment I let myself believe that the text would explain everything. A misunderstanding, a family emergency, anything but the dark suspicion growing inside me. I tapped the notification. Jordan, taking my new family to the Maldives. You babysit. Cabins paid for the week. Will send divorce papers when I return. Don't try to reach me. The words hit like physical blows. New family. Maldives. Babysit. Divorce. I read it again, desperately searching for some hint that this was a cruel joke or a mistake. The text was too cold, too calculated, too final to be anything but deliberate. Aunt Jordan, where should I put my... Sophie stopped mid-sentence, staring at me. Are you okay? You look super pale. The phone slipped from my hands onto the wooden floor with a clatter. My legs gave way and I sank against the kitchen counter. Aunt Jordan. Sophie's voice seemed to come from far away. I'm fine, honey, I managed, the lie bitter on my tongue. Just a little tired from the drive. Sophie frowned, unconvinced. Should I get you some water? I nodded, needing a moment to collect myself. My heart pounded so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. 15 years of marriage dissolved in a 2-sentence text. The betrayal was breathtaking in its callousness. Sophie returned with a glass of water, concern etched across her young face. I forced myself to take small sips while my mind raced through implications. Evan had carefully orchestrated this, arranging to transport the children, paying for the cabin, leaving cash. This wasn't a spontaneous decision, he'd been planning this. Did you like the note Uncle Evan left? Tyler asked, bouncing into the kitchen. He said we could order pizza every night if we wanted. That's generous of him, I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. My phone pinged again with an incoming call. My sister Lisa's name appeared on the screen, and I nearly collapsed with relief. Lisa, thank God, I answered, stepping onto the cabin's porch for privacy. Where are you? What's happening? Jordan, why aren't you answering my texts? We've been trying to reach you for hours. Lisa's voice crackled through the speaker. The kids are with Evan, right? Is everything okay? My stomach dropped. The kids are with me. At Cedar Lake. Evan's not here. Silence. Then, what do you mean he's not there? He was supposed to bring them to the resort and meet you. Well, he dropped them off and left. I couldn't bring myself to tell her about the text, not yet. When did you last see him? This morning at the gas station off Highway 16. He said he was taking the kids early to set up the cabins and would text when everything was ready. Lisa's voice sharpened with worry. Jordan, what's going on? I don't know yet, I lied, unwilling to admit the truth even to myself. But I'm handling it. The kids are fine. After promising to call her back, I tried Evan's brother next. Mark answered on the first ring. Jordan, where's Charlie? Is he okay? He's fine. They're all fine. The words came automatically now. Mark, did Evan say anything unusual when he picked up Charlie? Mark hesitated. Not really. He just said he was excited about the trip and wanted to get the kids settled early. Jordan, what's happening? You sound strange. I cut the call short with more reassurances, then leaned against the porch railing trying to breathe normally. The evening air carried the scent of pine and lake water, mockingly peaceful against the chaos in my mind. Back inside, I found the children had arranged their sleeping bags in the larger bedroom, apparently deciding to have a group sleepover rather than spread out across the cabin. Their innocence in the face of Evan's betrayal made my chest ache. Who wants to help make dinner? I asked, plastering on a smile I didn't feel. As we prepared the simple meal of pasta I'd brought along, my mind worked through the logistics of our situation. 5 children for a week. Evan gone, not just temporarily but permanently. A divorce looming. Uncle Evan said his friend has a fancy boat, Charlie commented as he set plastic cups on the table. He showed us pictures of it yesterday. It had a swimming pool right on it. I froze. What friend? Some lady. Charlie shrugged. He said she lives in a really big house and travels all the time for her job. The pasta water boiled over, hissing as it hit the burner. I barely noticed, suddenly connecting dots I hadn't seen before. The late nights, the mysterious business meetings, the new suits, the password changed on our joint account. Did Uncle Evan say the lady's name? I asked, keeping my voice light. Lisa or Lena or something, Sophie offered. He kept showing us pictures of beaches where they were going. I remember because it made Mom mad that he was on his phone instead of helping with our bags. My hands shook so badly that I had to set down the spoon. Lisa or Lena. Beaches. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. After dinner, I sent the children to the small living room to watch a movie on the cabin's ancient TV. With trembling fingers, I typed a response to Evan's message. You can't just abandon your family responsibilities. These are children, not packages to be dropped off. Where are you? The message showed as delivered but remained unread. Of course. He was probably on a plane by now, headed for sandy beaches with a woman whose name the children barely remembered. I moved to the cabin's main window, watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of orange and gold. In the glass I could see my reflection, pale, stunned, a woman whose life had just imploded. The beautiful view blurred as unexpected tears filled my eyes. This was supposed to be our family vacation, a chance to reconnect after months of Evan's increasingly distant behavior. Instead, it had become the moment my marriage ended. As darkness fell over the lake, I made my first real decision of this new, unwanted reality. I wouldn't tell the children tonight. They deserved one more evening of normalcy before learning their uncle had abandoned them, abandoned us all. Tomorrow would be soon enough for harsh truths. Tonight, I just needed to breathe, to process, to begin accepting that the life I thought I had was over. But even as one chapter ended, something else stirred within me. A spark of determination that would soon become a flame. Evan thought he could discard us without consequences. He thought I would simply accept his decision and fade quietly into the background of his new life. He was wrong. The cabin fell silent just after 11. Even Charlie, the night owl who'd begged to stay up just 5 more minutes 3 times, had finally drifted off in his sleeping bag. I tucked an extra blanket around Sophie, who always kicked her covers off, before quietly closing the bedroom door. For the first time since arriving at Cedar Lake, I was truly alone with my thoughts. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a temporary crisis but my new reality. I sank onto the lumpy sofa, listening to the unfamiliar night sounds of the lake. A loon called somewhere in the darkness, its mournful cry matching the hollow feeling in my chest. Sleep was impossible. My mind raced with questions, each more disturbing than the last. How long had Evan been planning this? Who was this woman? And most pressingly, what was I going to tell the children? I retrieved my laptop from the car and set it up at the kitchen table. The soft blue glow illuminated the dark cabin as I logged into our joint bank account, something I hadn't done in months. Evan had always handled our finances, claiming it made sense since he ran the business. I trusted him completely. What a fool I'd been. The first red flag jumped out immediately. A $25,000 transfer to an account I didn't recognize, dated just 3 weeks ago. I scrolled back further, finding similar transfers dating back 6 months, each labeled vaguely as business development or consulting fees. That's not right, I whispered, mentally calculating the total. Nearly $200,000 had flowed out of our account since January. I dug deeper, examining our credit card statements. Charges from high-end restaurants in the city where Evan claimed to have client meetings. Hotel bookings on weekends he'd told me he was at industry conferences. A jewelry purchase from Tiffany's for $12,750. Certainly not for me. My hands trembled as I switched to the business accounting software I'd helped set up years ago when Northstar Development was just a fledgling real estate company. I still had access, though Evan had gradually pushed me out of the day-to-day operations, insisting I enjoy life while he handled the business. The company books told an even more disturbing story. Project budgets with inflated contractor fees. Properties bought and sold with unusual financing structures. Consulting payments to a company called Harmon Financial Advisors that hadn't existed in our vendor list when I was actively involved. Harmon. The name triggered something in my memory. I opened Instagram, searching through Evan's rarely used account. Nothing unusual there, just occasional business photos and the curated family images he posted for clients who valued his family man image. But when I searched for recent check-ins at the restaurants from our credit card statements, I found what I was looking for. A woman with sleek dark hair and sharp eyes appeared in photos tagged at Le Bernardin 3 weeks ago, the same night Evan had claimed to be meeting with investors from Dubai. She wasn't tagged, but several comments mentioned Lisa and power couple vibes. Lisa Harmon. The name hit me like a thunderbolt. I remembered her now. The poised woman Evan had introduced at last year's company holiday party as a brilliant financial consultant, who was helping optimize our business structure. I'd shaken her hand, thanked her for her work, completely unaware she was already embedded in my husband's life. My laptop screen blurred as unexpected tears filled my eyes. 15 years of marriage, all the sacrifices I'd made to help build Northstar from nothing. And this was how it ended. With a text message and a trail of financial breadcrumbs leading to another woman. But as I wiped my eyes and continued digging, my sadness crystallized into something harder. This wasn't just about Evan leaving me for another woman. The financial patterns were too suspicious, the business transactions too irregular. I pulled up the company's bank statements, something I hadn't looked at in over a year. What I found made my blood run cold. Regular transfers to offshore accounts. Falsified vendor payments. Client deposits that never made it to the main accounts. Oh my God, I whispered, recognizing the pattern from a fraud seminar I'd attended years ago. Evan wasn't just cheating on me, he was embezzling from the company. Our company. I searched for Lisa Harmon online and the results stunned me. She wasn't just any financial consultant. She was a former SEC investigator who now specialized in uncovering financial fraud. Her company profile described her as an expert in following money trails and documenting fraudulent activities. The pieces locked together with terrible clarity. Lisa Harmon hadn't fallen for Evan's charm. She was investigating him. And he, in his arrogance, had no idea. He thought he was seducing her when she was actually building a case against him. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat. The great Evan Thompson, master negotiator, had been played at his own game. He was flying to the Maldives with a woman who was almost certainly documenting his every move, every confession, every financial detail he shared in pillow talk. Dawn was breaking over the lake when I finally closed my laptop. Pink light filtered through the cabin windows, illuminating the children's backpacks and swim toys scattered across the floor. These innocent children were collateral damage in Evan's scheme, just like me. I moved to the window, watching a heron glide silently across the misty surface of the lake. My whole body ached with exhaustion, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. Evan had made a critical mistake. He'd assumed I was just the supportive wife, the silent partner who didn't understand the business he'd gradually etched me out of. He'd forgotten that before I gave up my career to support his dreams, I'd been an accountant with a specialty in forensic investigations, the very background that had helped us establish Northstar's accounting systems. He'd also underestimated how much I still knew about the company's operations, about the board members, about the investors who'd trusted us with their money. Most importantly, he'd forgotten that I had nothing left to lose. I watched the sun rise fully over Cedar Lake, painting the water gold and burning away the morning mist. With each passing minute, my shock and grief transformed into something more potent: determination. Evan thought he'd left me with babysitting duty while he enjoyed his new life. Instead, he'd given me exactly what I needed: time, motivation, and access to information that could destroy everything he'd built. My phone pinged with a text from my sister. "What's happening? Call me." I looked back at the sleeping children, then at the financial evidence spread across my laptop screen. For their sake as much as mine, Evan couldn't be allowed to escape the consequences of his actions. I texted back 4 words that would mark the beginning of Evan Thompson's downfall. "I need your help." My fingers trembled as I dialed a number I hadn't called in nearly 8 years. The children were splashing in the shallows of the lake, supervised by my sister Lisa, who had arrived that morning after my cryptic text. She'd taken one look at my exhausted face and wordlessly agreed to watch the kids while I made some calls. "Pritchard Accounting, Rebecca speaking." I swallowed hard. "Rebecca? It's Jordan Thompson." "Well, Jordan Miller back when we worked together." The pause on the other end lasted only seconds before her warm voice filled the line. "Jordan. My goodness, it's been years. How are you?" "I've been better," I admitted, my voice cracking. "Becca, I need help. Professional help." There was another pause. "This sounds serious. Are you okay?" I gave her the condensed version: Evan's disappearance, the text, the children left behind, and my midnight discoveries. With each word, my voice grew steadier, as if speaking the truth aloud was strengthening my resolve. "So you think your husband is embezzling from your company," Rebecca summarized when I finished. "And this woman he's with?" "Lisa Harmon," I confirmed. The sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line wasn't what I expected. "You know who she is, don't you?" Rebecca asked quietly. "A financial consultant who's been working with our company," I said. "And apparently sleeping with my husband." Jordan, Lisa Harmon is one of the most feared forensic auditors in the industry. She built her reputation taking down the CFO of Meridian Trust 3 years ago. Followed the money through 7 shell companies in 3 countries. She doesn't consult for companies, she investigates them. My hunch confirmed. I gripped the phone tighter. "So Evan has no idea who he's really with." "If Lisa Harmon is involved, your husband is already in serious trouble," Rebecca said. "The question is, where do you stand in all this?" That was the question I'd been wrestling with since dawn. I helped build North Star from nothing, but Evans gradually pushed me out over the last few years. My name is still on the founding documents, but do you have any evidence that you weren't involved in the financial irregularities? I glanced toward the cabin where my laptop contained the files I'd spent all morning organizing. "I'm building a timeline. I can prove when I stopped having active involvement in the finances." "Good," Rebecca said firmly. "You need to protect yourself, Jordan. And I might know someone who can help. Let me make a call." After hanging up, I wandered down to the lake's edge, watching the children splash and laugh with my sister. How quickly their world could change, just like mine had. Charlie was teaching Sophie how to skip stones, while the others built an elaborate sand castle. Their innocence struck me like a physical pain. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "David Chin will call you in 15 minutes. He's the best forensic accountant I know." I retreated to a weathered bench beneath a pine tree, out of earshot from the children but where I could still watch them. When the phone rang, I answered immediately. "Mrs. Thompson? This is David Chin. Rebecca, Pritchard asked me to call you." David's methodical questions helped clarify my thoughts. Yes, I had documentation of when my active role in the company diminished. Yes, I could access past communications showing Evan's insistence on handling financial matters. Yes, there was a clear distinction between the legitimate operations I'd overseen and the questionable transactions that came later. "What you're describing is a classic case of financial compartmentalization," David explained. "Your husband created a system where legitimate business was separated from fraudulent activities, with different people handling each side, often unknowingly. In many cases, the spouse is used as an unwitting front for legitimacy." "Used," I repeated, the bitter word tasting like truth. "That's exactly what happened." After scheduling a secure virtual meeting for the following day, I hung up feeling marginally better. At least I had a path forward now, a way to disentangle myself from Evan's crimes. My next call was harder. Gerald Winston had been one of our first business partners. a venture capitalist who'd believed in North Star when it was just a concept in our living room. 2 years ago, he'd abruptly pulled his investments and stopped returning Evan's calls. At the time, Evan had dismissed it as Gerald getting cold feet about the market. The call went to voicemail twice before he finally answered on my third attempt. "Jordan." His voice carried both surprise and wariness. "This is unexpected." "I know," I said, cutting to the chase. "Gerald, I need to understand why you pulled out of North Star 2 years ago." The silence stretched so long I thought he might have hung up. Finally he sighed. "You really don't know, do you? I'm starting to piece things together, but I need your help. Jordan, I liked you. Always did. That's why this is difficult." He paused again. "I pulled my investment because I saw irregularities in the quarterly reports. When I confronted Evan, he gave explanations that didn't add up. I hired my own accountant to review the publicly available information, and the recommendation was clear: get out." My stomach tightened. "Why didn't you come to me?" "Evan said you were having health problems, that you'd stepped away from the business entirely. He implied approaching you would cause you significant stress during your recovery." The lie stole my breath. There had been no health problems, no recovery. Just Evan systematically cutting me off from our business contacts, isolating me from the company I'd helped create. "Gerald, I need to know who else he might have told this to." By mid-afternoon, I had a list of names. Former partners, investors, and colleagues who'd distanced themselves from North Star over the past 3 years. Each conversation revealed new layers of Evan's deception. To some, I'd been suffering from depression. To others, I'd developed problematic spending habits that made me untrustworthy. To our earliest supporters, Evan had claimed I wanted to focus on family planning and had voluntarily stepped away. Between calls, I documented everything meticulously, creating spreadsheets tracking the timeline of Evan's lies alongside the company's financial irregularities. The pattern was undeniable. Each time someone questioned the business practices, Evan created a new reason why I couldn't be involved or consulted. The sun was setting when Marco Delgado, our company's first major client, finally confirmed what I'd begun to suspect. "The board meeting last quarter was when I knew something was wrong," he said. "Evan presented financial projections that contradicted the operational reports your team had prepared. When questioned, he claimed the operational side, your side, didn't have the complete financial picture. He convinced the board to approve a restructuring that put all financial oversight under his direct control." I pressed my palm against my forehead, fighting a tension headache. "The documents I signed were presented as streamlining redundant processes," Marco finished. "I remember thinking it was strange you weren't at that meeting." I thanked him and hung up, staring at the lake's darkening surface. The children were inside now with my sister, the sounds of their board game floating through the open cabin windows. My laptop screen glowed with evidence of Evan's systematic betrayal, not just of me but of everyone who had trusted in North Star. He hadn't just constructed a fraudulent financial scheme. He'd built an elaborate web of lies to isolate me from anyone who might have alerted me to the truth. And in doing so, he'd made his most critical mistake. The network he'd tried to cut me off from remembered me, and they were ready to help. Morning light filtered through the cabin windows as I watched the children hunched over a game of Monopoly. My sister had left the previous evening, reluctantly returning to her own family after extracting a promise that I'd call if I needed anything. The children had adapted to our strange situation with remarkable resilience, accepting my vague explanation that Uncle Evan had an emergency with minimal questions. But their trust in me made my next steps both clearer and more painful. Charlie hooped as he collected rent from Sophie, who dramatically flopped back against the sofa cushions. "I'm ruined. Completely ruined," she declared, making the others giggle. Their innocence in the face of adult betrayal twisted something in my chest. I fingered the business card David Chin had emailed me. Margaret Winters, family law attorney. Next to it lay another card. Child Protective Services, with the direct line to a caseworker Rebecca's sister knew personally. The weight of the decision pressed down on me. These weren't just my nieces and nephews. They were children whose parents had entrusted them to Evan and me. Children Evan had callously abandoned, counting on me to handle the messy human elements while he jetted off to paradise. I'd spent hours agonizing over the right course of action. A part of me, the part still reeling from betrayal, wanted to call the children's parents and let Evan deal with the fallout. But I knew that approach risked the children becoming pawns in an ugly situation not of their making. "Aunt Jordan, can we go swimming after lunch?" Tyler asked, breaking into my thoughts. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Sure, honey. We'll go down to the beach after you finish your game." When Tyler turned back to the board, I slipped outside onto the porch with my phone. 5 days had passed since Evan's text. 5 days of caring for the children, building my case and weighing my options. The time for indecision was over. I dialed the CPS number, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Child Protective Services, this is Diane speaking. I'd like to speak with Melanie Ortiz," I said, asking for the caseworker Rebecca had recommended. After a brief hold, a warm, no-nonsense voice came on the line. "This is Melanie Ortiz." I took a deep breath. "My name is Jordan Thompson. I'm currently caring for 5 children at Cedar Lake Resort. Their uncle, my husband, was supposed to be co-chaperoning but has abandoned them. I need advice on the proper legal channels to ensure their care and safety." To her credit, Melanie didn't sound shocked. "Are the children in any immediate danger?" "No," I assured her. "They're safe and well cared for. But I need to document this situation properly. My husband has indicated he won't be returning, and I can't keep the children indefinitely without proper authorization from their parents." The conversation that followed was both practical and validating. Melanie explained the process for documenting abandoned children, even in cases where another responsible adult remained. She emphasized that my priority should be contacting the parents and establishing a formal temporary guardianship until they could retrieve their children. "This documentation protects both you and the children," she explained. "If your husband later makes claims about the children's care, you'll have an official record of his abandonment and your responsible actions." I thanked her, promising to email the necessary documentation before the day's end. The call left me feeling strangely lighter. I wasn't just reacting to Evan's betrayal anymore. I was taking deliberate steps to protect both the children and myself. My next call required more fortitude. I dialed William Barrett, the chairman of North Star's board of directors and a man who had never bothered to hide his condescension toward me. "Jordan," he greeted when his assistant patched me through. "This is unexpected. Is Evan with you?" "No, William, he isn't." My voice was steadier than I'd anticipated. "I need to schedule an emergency board meeting. Today." The pause on the other end of the line spoke volumes. "I'm afraid that's not possible. Board meetings must be called by the CEO and..." As a founding partner and signatory to the original Articles of Incorporation, I have the authority to call emergency meetings in cases of potential malfeasance, I interrupted, quoting directly from our company bylaws. "I'm exercising that right now." Another pause. "May I ask what this concerns?" "Financial irregularities and potential fraud that put the company at significant risk." I kept my tone professional, betraying none of the turmoil beneath. "I've compiled documentation that the board needs to review immediately. Jordan, if you're having some sort of domestic dispute with Evan, the boardroom isn't the appropriate venue." My fingers tightened around the phone. "This isn't about my marriage, William. This is about the company's survival. I can either present my findings to the board today, or I can take them directly to the SEC. Your choice." The mention of the SEC changed his tone immediately. "I see. Let me see what I can arrange." By noon, I had confirmation of a virtual board meeting scheduled for 3 p.m. I spent the next hour playing with the children at the lake, helping them build sand castles and watching them splash in the shallows. Their laughter was a stark contrast to the gravity of what I was about to do. After lunch, I settled them with a movie and retreated to the bedroom with my laptop, the door ajar so I could hear if they needed me. I reviewed my presentation one final time. The timeline of financial irregularities, the evidence of Evan's systematic deception, the documentation from former partners confirming they'd withdrawn due to concerns about the company's practices. At precisely 3 p.m. I logged into the video conference to find 7 solemn faces staring back at me. William Barrett, Janet Myers, Michael Chin. The rest of the board members who had always seen me as an accessory to Evan rather than a founder in my own right. "Thank you for convening on such short notice," I began, screen sharing my presentation. "What I'm about to show you concerns the financial integrity and future of North Star Development." For the next 20 minutes I presented my findings methodically, my voice never wavering. I showed them the pattern of offshore transfers, the falsified contractor invoices, the discrepancies between reported profits and actual assets. I explained how Evan had systematically isolated me from the company while creating a parallel financial structure hidden from regular operations. When I finished, the silence was deafening. Janet Myers was the first to speak. "Why are you bringing this to us rather than to Evan?" "Because Evan is currently unreachable," I replied evenly. "He left the country 5 days ago with Lisa Harmon." Michael Chen's eyebrows shot up. "Lisa Harmon, the forensic auditor?" I nodded. "The same. I have reason to believe she's been investigating North Star's finances for some time, possibly building a case against the company." The mood in the virtual meeting shifted palpably. What they had perhaps initially dismissed as a wife's vendetta suddenly carried the weight of potential legal consequences. "What are you suggesting we do?" William asked, his earlier condescension replaced by wary respect. "Authorize an immediate internal audit. Freeze Evan's access to company accounts. And prepare for the possibility that Lisa Harmon's investigation may lead to formal charges." My phone pinged with a notification as the board members began rapid-fire questions. I glanced down to see the flight tracking app I'd installed. Evan's flight from the Maldives was scheduled to land in exactly 2 hours and 17 minutes. I looked back at the screen at the faces of people who had underestimated me for years. "There's one more thing," I said, my voice calm. "I'd like to be reinstated to my original position as Chief Financial Officer, effective immediately." The children's laughter floated in from the living room as the board members exchanged glances. In that moment, I knew I had reclaimed not just my voice but my future. A future that would no longer be defined by Evan Thompson's betrayal or ambitions. "All those in favor?" William asked, his expression grim as the notification on my phone updated, confirming that Evan's flight had begun its final approach. "All in favor?" William repeated, his voice carrying a gravity I'd never heard before. Hands raced across the screen one by one. Even Richard Mendez, Evan's longtime friend, raised his hand after a moment's hesitation. "Motion carries. Jordan Thompson is reinstated as Chief Financial Officer of North Star Development, effective immediately," William announced. "And we authorize a full internal audit." Relief washed over me, quickly replaced by renewed determination. "There's something else you should see." I shared another screen, the flight tracker showing Evan's plane approaching its final descent. "My husband will be landing in less than 2 hours, completely unaware that his scheme has been exposed." Janet leaned forward. "Do you think he'll try to destroy evidence once he realizes what's happening?" "Almost certainly," I replied. "Which is why I've prepared this." I displayed a draft press release announcing the board's decision to suspend Evan pending an internal investigation. If we release this the moment his plane lands, it creates an immediate public record. It also means he'll be locked out of the systems before he has a chance to cover his tracks. Michael Chin looked impressed. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "Not everything. Just everything I could control. The children were still a complicated situation and my marriage was over. But for the first time in days I felt something beyond grief and shock. A sense of righteous purpose." The meeting concluded with a flurry of action items. Legal counsel would be notified. Security protocols would be changed. The press release was approved for immediate distribution upon Evan's landing. As I closed my laptop, Tyler peeked into the room. "Is your work meeting over, Aunt Jordan?" "We finished the movie." I smiled genuinely this time. "All done. How about we make some popcorn?" The juxtaposition wasn't lost on me, discussing corporate espionage 1 minute, microwave popcorn the next. But these children deserved stability amid chaos. They wouldn't know until necessary that their uncle had abandoned them, that the adult world could be so calculatingly cruel. My phone chimed with an email from David Chin. Subject: offshore accounts located. The final pieces were falling into place. The popcorn bowl sat empty on the coffee table. The children were engaged in an elaborate card house construction when my phone buzzed. A simple notification: Flight AA-287 landed. Time seemed to slow. Somewhere across the city, Evan was disembarking, probably relaxed from his tropical getaway, perhaps even smug about how he'd managed everything so neatly. In moments that world would collapse. I stepped onto the porch and dialed William Barrett. The flight's landed. The press release goes out in 5 minutes, he confirmed. Jordan, I owe you an apology. I've underestimated you for years. Most people have, I replied, surprised by how little his validation meant now. What matters is what happens next. What happened next unfolded with the precision of a Swiss watch. At 5:17 the press release hit the newswires. At 5:23, I received confirmation that Evan's company credentials had been suspended. At the same moment, the board notified the company's legal team, who immediately began securing documents. I was wiping peanut butter from Sophie's hands when my phone rang. Evan's name flashed on the screen. For a moment I considered letting it go to voicemail, but the children were watching. This conversation was inevitable. "Hello, Evan." The fury in his voice could have melted steel. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he hissed. "I just got a call from the board saying I'm suspended. And there's a press release." "Yes, there is," I replied calmly, moving to the porch for privacy. "You should have stayed in the Maldives a little longer. This is ridiculous. You can't just." "I can, and I did. The board has seen the evidence, Evan. The offshore accounts. The falsified reports. Everything." His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? I wonder if Lisa Harmon agrees." The silence on the other end was deeply satisfying. "How is your soulmate, by the way? Still doing her SEC investigation, or did she get everything she needed during your romantic getaway?" "You've lost your mind," he sputtered, but the confidence had drained from his voice. "Where are the kids?" "Safe with me. No thanks to you." "I'm coming to get them." "No, you're not." My voice hardened. "You abandoned 5 children who were entrusted to your care. I've already filed a report with CPS documenting that fact." The string of expletives that followed told me everything I needed to know about the man I'd married. This wasn't shock or righteous indignation. This was the rage of someone whose careful plans had imploded. "By the way," I added when he paused for breath, "Lisa Harmon isn't just investigating North Star. She's building a case against you personally. The board already knows." "You're bluffing." "Check your email, Evan. The board has sent you formal notification of the internal audit. It's starting tomorrow." I ended the call as Charlie approached, asking if we could roast marshmallows in the cabin's fireplace. The ordinary request against the backdrop of extraordinary circumstances almost made me laugh. "Absolutely," I told him. "Let's do that right now." The next morning brought news that exceeded even my expectations. Lisa Harmon had indeed been investigating Evan for months, building a comprehensive case demonstrating how he'd siphoned company funds into personal accounts. The moment Evan's plane landed, she had contacted federal authorities with her evidence. "He's been detained for questioning," William informed me during our early conference call. The FBI was waiting at his apartment. I should have felt vindicated, perhaps even satisfied. Instead, I felt a strange emptiness as I watched the children eat breakfast, blissfully unaware of the adult drama unfolding around them. Later that day, my sister arrived to take her children home, followed by Evan's brother. The explanations were painful but necessary. No, Uncle Evan wouldn't be joining us. Yes, there were some serious problems with his business. No, it wasn't the children's fault. As the cabin emptied of little voices and scattered toys, I found myself standing alone at the lake's edge. The water rippled gently in the breeze, indifferent to human dramas. My phone chimed with a text from Rebecca. "Saw the news. You okay?" Was I? The marriage I thought I had was a mirage. The company I'd helped build had been corrupted. The future I'd planned had vanished. And yet, I looked at the sunset painting the sky in shades of possibility. For the first time in years, I was making my own decisions, standing in my own power. The path ahead was unclear but undeniably mine. Getting there, I texted back. One day at a time. The cabin that had witnessed the unraveling of one life would now see the beginning of another. I picked up a smooth stone from the shore and skipped it across the water, watching it bounce once, twice, 3 times before disappearing beneath the surface. Like those ripples, the consequences of these days would spread far beyond what I could currently see. But I was ready to face whatever came next, no longer a silent partner in my own life. 2 weeks after the lakeside confrontation, I sat in a sleek conference room in the federal building downtown. The table was polished to a high shine, reflecting the serious faces of the investigators gathered around it. Special Agent Danielle Reyes led the questioning, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "Mrs. Thompson, can you walk us through when you first suspected financial irregularities at North Star?" she asked, pen poised above her notepad. For the next hour I methodically outlined the evidence I'd gathered. The unusual transfers. The falsified reports. The offshore accounts that didn't align with legitimate business operations. The investigators nodded occasionally, adding my testimony to what was clearly becoming a substantial case. "And you had no knowledge of these activities prior to discovering your husband's text message?" Agent Reyes confirmed. "None," I replied firmly. "Evan had systematically removed me from financial oversight over the past 3 years, using various pretexts with different stakeholders." She nodded, seemingly satisfied. "That aligns with Lisa Harmon's testimony." I tried to keep my expression neutral at the mention of the woman's name. "You've spoken with Ms. Harmon?" A slight smile crossed Reyes's face. "Extensively. Her cooperation has been comprehensive." The revelation shouldn't have surprised me, yet it did. So she was working with authorities all along? "Ms. Harmon approached us 6 months ago with concerns about potential financial fraud at North Star. As a forensic auditor with her background, her suspicions carried weight." Agent Reyes closed her notebook. What she didn't anticipate was becoming personally involved with Mr. Thompson. I absorbed this information, pieces clicking into place. She didn't plan the relationship? According to Ms. Harmon, your husband pursued her aggressively after learning of her expertise. She recognized an opportunity to gather information and, with our approval, allowed the relationship to develop professionally. Agent Reyes paused. The personal aspect was unplanned. The irony was almost too perfect. Evan, thinking he was seducing a brilliant financial consultant who could help him cover his tracks, had actually invited a federal informant into his confidence. His own arrogance had been his undoing. "Ms. Harmon has expressed interest in speaking with you if you're amenable," Agent Reyes added, watching my reaction carefully. I considered the offer. The woman who'd been photographed with my husband at expensive restaurants. The woman he'd called his soulmate in that cold text message. The woman who had, inadvertently or not, helped bring his criminal activities to light. Yes, I decided. I think I would like that conversation. Lisa Harmon wasn't what I expected. Somehow I'd pictured someone glossier, more overtly glamorous. Instead, the woman who sat across from me in the quiet corner of the cafe was elegantly understated, with intelligent eyes and a direct gaze. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she began, her voice lower than I'd imagined. "I know this is unusual." "Unusual doesn't begin to cover it," I replied, surprised by my own calm. "But I think we both deserve some clarity." She nodded, turning her coffee cup slowly. "I never intended to become involved with Evan personally. That wasn't part of the investigation plan." "But you did." "Yes." She met my gaze unflinchingly. "Initially, I maintained professional boundaries. But Evan was persistent. When it became clear that he was more forthcoming about financial details in personal settings, my supervisors suggested I allow the relationship to develop." "And you agreed?" There was no accusation in my tone, just a statement of fact. "I did. It was a professional decision that became complicated." She looked down at her hands. "I didn't know about you, not the real you. Evan told me his wife was a silent partner in name only, someone who had lost interest in the business years ago and was mainly concerned with social status." The familiar sting of Evan's lies felt distant now, like an old injury that had finally begun to heal. "That's not who I am." "I know that now," Lisa said quietly. "When I saw how he abandoned those children, how callously he treated people who trusted him, that's when I realized the man I thought I knew was a carefully constructed facade." We sat in silence for a moment, two women connected by the same man's deception, though in vastly different ways. "The Maldives trip," I finally asked. "Was that planned as part of the investigation?" A flash of something, embarrassment perhaps, crossed her face. "No. That was Evan's idea. He said he wanted to discuss a special financial opportunity away from prying eyes. I informed my supervisors, who saw it as a potential breakthrough moment. The timing was unfortunate. For the children, yes." I sipped my cooling coffee. For me, perhaps it was exactly what needed to happen. Lisa studied me with new respect. The evidence you gathered in those few days was remarkable. The prosecutors say your documentation will be crucial to the case. I had motivation. She smiled slightly. Clearly. Her expression turned serious again. You should know. I've submitted a full statement detailing how Evan acted alone in the financial fraud. Your exclusion from the company's financial operations is well documented. The weight that lifted from my shoulders was tangible. Thank you. As our unusual meeting concluded, Lisa hesitated before standing. For what it's worth, I'm sorry for the pain this caused you. That was never my intention. I considered her words. This woman hadn't set out to destroy my marriage. She'd simply been doing her job when my husband had decided to make her part of his elaborate deception. The real villain remained Evan. The truth has its own timeline, I said finally. Better now than years from now. The boardroom at North Star Development looked different now that I sat at the head of the table. The quarter-end meeting had just concluded, with projections showing a stabilizing financial outlook despite the upheaval of recent months. Excellent work, everyone, I said, closing the presentation. Any questions before we adjourn? Janet Myers raised her hand. There's one item not on the agenda. The press has been requesting a statement regarding Evan's plea deal. News of Evan's agreement to plead guilty to multiple charges of wire fraud and tax evasion had broken that morning. In exchange for his cooperation in identifying other participants in the scheme, he would face reduced sentencing, though still substantial prison time. Our official statement is that North Star Development is focused on the future, I replied, the response well rehearsed. The company has implemented comprehensive financial oversight protocols and is committed to transparent operations moving forward. As the board members gathered their materials and filed out, William Barrett lingered. The chairman had become an unexpected ally in the rebuilding process. Quite the journey these past months, he observed. From being excluded from company operations to running the show. How does it feel? I considered his question seriously. Like reclaiming something that was always partly mine. William nodded. The investors are impressed with the recovery plan. The fact that you've stabilized the company this quickly is nothing short of remarkable. I had excellent motivation, I replied. And I wasn't building from scratch, just redirecting what had gone off course. After he left, I remained alone in the boardroom looking out at the city skyline. My phone chimed with a calendar reminder. Dinner with my sister and the children. Life had developed a new rhythm in the aftermath of Evan's betrayal. Weekdays devoted to rebuilding the company. Weekends often spent with family, rebuilding those connections as well. The notification that had once shown Evan's approaching flight now displayed a different countdown. 30 days until the final divorce hearing. The end of one chapter, the beginning of another. I gathered my things ready to leave the office that now truly felt like mine. The silent partner had found her voice, and it turned out she had quite a lot to say after all. The courthouse steps felt symbolic, a threshold between my past and future. I paused at the top, taking a moment to straighten my navy blazer before pulling open the heavy door. Inside, the polished marble floors echoed with purposeful footsteps as people moved between courtrooms, their faces reflecting various stages of anxiety, relief, or resignation. My attorney, Marissa Klein, waited by the entrance to courtroom C, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a professional knot. She'd guided me through the maze of legal proceedings with unwavering competence over the past several months. "Ready?" she asked, her expression both kind and determined. "More than ready," I answered truthfully. We entered the courtroom together. It wasn't crowded, just a handful of observers, legal representatives, and court officials. And then there was Evan, seated beside his attorney, wearing an ill-fitting suit that wasn't his usual custom tailoring. The ankle monitor visible beneath his pant leg explained the change in his wardrobe standards. Our eyes met briefly. Where I had once seen charm and confidence, I now recognized only calculation and self-interest. He looked away first. Judge Harriet Nelson entered, and the proceedings began with efficient formality. Today would determine the final division of assets, the last piece in the unraveling of our 15-year marriage. The criminal sentencing for Evan's financial crimes would come later, in federal court. The court recognizes the unique circumstances of this dissolution, Judge Nelson stated, reviewing the documents before her. Given Mr. Thompson's current legal situation and the documented financial improprieties, the court finds in favor of Mrs. Thompson's petition for equitable distribution with the adjustments noted. I listened as she outlined the settlement. The house would be sold with proceeds split after restitution requirements were met. My stake in North Star Development was confirmed and protected from any claims related to Evan's criminal case. My separate assets, including the inheritance from my grandmother that Evan had unsuccessfully attempted to access, remained solely mine. What struck me most was how little I cared about these material outcomes compared to what I had gained in personal strength. 6 months ago, I had been devastated by Evan's betrayal. Today I felt only a calm certainty that justice was being served. When Evan's attorney attempted to argue for more favorable terms, citing his client's cooperation with authorities, Judge Nelson's response was refreshingly direct. Mr. Thompson's cooperation came only after his schemes were exposed, she noted. This court cannot ignore the calculated nature of his actions, both financially and personally. The abandonment of minor children in his care demonstrates a character flaw that this court finds particularly troubling. The gavel fell with finality. Dissolution granted. Next case. Outside, rain had begun to fall, gentle but persistent. I stood under the courthouse overhang, watching droplets create ripples and puddles forming on the steps. Jordan. I turned to find Evan standing several feet away, his attorney noticeably absent. What do you want? I asked, neither hostile nor welcoming. He looked smaller somehow, diminished without his expensive suits and overconfident posture. I just wanted to say, this isn't how I thought things would end. The absurdity of his statement nearly made me laugh. That makes 2 of us. I never meant to hurt. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't insult me with that line. You made deliberate choices, Evan. Hundreds of them over months and years. You didn't accidentally embezzle money or accidentally abandon children in my care. He flinched at the directness of my words but didn't argue. Perhaps prison was teaching him something about accountability after all. I hope you find what you're looking for, Evan, I said finally. Whatever it is that makes you feel you need to take what isn't yours. I walked down the rain-slicked steps without looking back, opening my umbrella as I reached the sidewalk. The cool droplets that hit my face felt cleansing, washing away the last remnants of a chapter in my life that was finally officially closed. 1 year to the day after Evan's text message had shattered my world at Cedar Lake Resort, I found myself driving the same winding road toward the lakeside cabins. This time my car wasn't loaded with supplies for a family vacation but contained only my weekend bag and a small cooler. I'd booked Cabin 7 deliberately, the same one where I'd spent those pivotal days discovering Evan's betrayal and finding my own strength. The symbolism wasn't lost on me, nor was it accidental. The resort looked much the same, though the memories attached to it had transformed completely. I collected my key from the front desk, where a new manager didn't recognize me from the previous summer's drama. Just one, he asked pleasantly. Just me, I confirmed, feeling none of the embarrassment or sadness that such a statement might have evoked a year ago. The cabin was as rustic as I remembered, though the furniture had been rearranged. I set my bag on the bed and opened the windows to let in the late afternoon breeze carrying the scent of pine and lake water. On the small dining table, I arranged my laptop and the manuscript I'd been working on for the past 6 months. The Silent Partner, Recognizing Financial Fraud in Family Businesses, had begun as personal therapy but had evolved into something more substantive. My publisher believed it would help others navigate similar situations. My phone chimed with a text from William Barrett. Board approved the expansion proposal. Congratulations, CO. I smiled, setting the phone aside. North Star had not only survived the scandal of Evan's crimes but had emerged stronger under new leadership. My leadership. The company now operated with a transparency that had earned back the trust of investors and partners alike. As evening approached, I walked down to the lake's edge, where families were packing up their beach gear after a day of swimming in sandcastles. I found a quiet spot on the shore and sat watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and crimson. My life had taken a shape I never could have imagined a year ago. The divorce was final. Evan was serving his sentence at a minimum security prison in Pennsylvania. The children who had been unwittingly abandoned at this resort had recovered from the disruption. though Charlie still occasionally sent me drawings of the sand castles we'd built together. I picked up a smooth stone and skipped it across the lake's surface. 1, 2, 3, 4 bounces before it disappeared beneath the gentle waves. The ripples spread outward, intersecting and creating new patterns on the water. That was the thing about consequences I'd learned. They didn't just impact the intended target but created ripple effects that touched everything around them. Evan's betrayal had been meant to discard me quietly while he pursued a new life. Instead, it had set in motion a chain of events that had revealed his crimes, strengthened my resolve, and ultimately freed me to become the person I was always meant to be. The last light of day glinted off the lake as I turned toward the cabin, where my laptop waited with the final chapter of my book still to be written. The irony wasn't lost on me. The silent partner now had a voice and quite a story to tell. As darkness settled over Cedar Lake, I typed the closing lines of my manuscript. The greatest revenge isn't accomplishing your enemy's downfall, but discovering that their betrayal was actually your liberation. Justice, when it finally arrives, doesn't always wear the face you expect. Sometimes, it looks remarkably like finding your own voice after years of silence. And sometimes, that voice turns out to be stronger, clearer, and more powerful than anyone, including yourself, ever imagined it could be. I closed my laptop with a satisfying click. The silent partner had spoken her final word.